Hey guys, welcome back to ATO Audio. This is that Pioneer SX-950 I've been working on, and so this one is pretty much done now. The last thing I had to do was do the FM alignment on it, and so I kind of wanted to talk about that. And so when I started to do this FM alignment, guys, I was having a really hard time getting it to align. The signal meter was bouncing all around, and I just couldn't get a steady signal or steady results from it. So after that, I decided I'd go ahead and start taking a look at the board itself. And so I wanted to kind of point out a few things. And so one of the things you guys can do when you're working on your equipment is when you're starting to diagnose it, and you don't know where to start, you can check these voltages on these chips. And so I actually didn't do that. The first thing I did was look and see what kind of transistors were on the board, because my first thought was that maybe a transistor was going in and out and it was causing it not to get the signal, or something not working that way. So I looked and saw what kind of transistors were on here, and one of them in particular, a 2SA, 1312, I believe. I think it's this one right here, was a known troublesome transistor. And so I looked at it. It had the black-legged transistor syndrome, which we've talked about before. And so I decided, well, you know what? While I'm here, I'll just go ahead and replace these 4 transistors and see if it gets any better. And so I replaced those 4 transistors, put the board back in, and did a quick test. And it did improve somewhat, but still not to the point to where I thought it should be. I was getting good signal on some of the stations that are fairly close to me, but some of the more distant stations, I just wasn't getting as good a reception as I thought I should be if what I get in my other receivers. So then I started to look a little bit closer at the schematic, and so that signal meter was still kind of being jumpy, and so that signal meter is controlled by this variable resistor right here. And so then I decided, well, maybe this variable resistor is a bad. So I swapped that out, and I was still getting the same type thing. The signal meter wasn't being steady. So then I went and looked and saw what this was connected to, and there's actually 2 resistors underneath it, and then that goes into this chip over here as well. So I checked the solder points on this chip to make sure everything was fine. And one of the things you guys can do is that when this the stereo is on and you're tuned to a station, is just tap on it. If it's a cold solder joint or something else going on with the chip, you'll sometimes notice that it goes in and out. And so when I did that, I didn't get anything. So then I checked the resistance on these resistors, and they were right on spec, so no problem there. This variable resistor was also right on spec, no problems there. So then I started to kind of look around, what else could it be? And I said, you know what, let me pull this capacitor, a couple of these capacitors. And this thing has 18 capacitors on it. And I kid you not, 17 out of the 18 were bad. And this particular one that goes into this chip, 2 legs of this chip actually, was completely open. And so it was bad. But you never know what you're going to get into when you go to do one simple thing with these vintage equipment. You might replace one component, and that just kind of leads you down the rabbit hole, and it really did with this tuner board. So I wound up replacing all the transistors and the electrolytic capacitors on here as well. And then once I got it put all back together and did the FM alignment, now this thing is working perfect. I'm picking up stations that are 40-something miles away now, no problem. And so just goes to show, guys, that you never know what you're going to get into. Sometimes an easy task will wind up being a much harder task. But again, kind of just showing you my thought process on diagnosing this. I hate fixing tuner issues because I can't say that I'm an expert on tuners or anything like that. I know a little bit, but usually they're the more complicated problems that I run around. And so a good train of thought, guys, is checking your voltages and make sure they're right. And then when you're having a problem with maybe one particular sector, is going back to the schematic and looking at what's on that. And so that's how basically what I did to kind of troubleshoot this and then get to the capacitors. And so once I found one bad, I just check a couple more, and that led me to recapping all of these and putting some film caps in a couple places here as well. So now this thing's working good. There's not anything really left to do to this stereo electrically. It's in really good shape. It sounds really good. The amp board's been rebuilt. The power supply's been rebuilt. The protection board's been rebuilt. Now the tuner board's been rebuilt. And all the controls have been cleaned. So this thing's pretty much done. I got to do some cosmetic cleaning to the outside of this unit, and then it'll be ready to go to its new home. So when I'm done with that and get it all put back together, I'll do another quick little demo video so you guys can see how it turned out. But this is that one that had the burned out resistors on the amp board, and so it's turned out really, really good and sounds really good now. So thanks for tuning in, guys. If you got any questions on the tuner board repair that I did, guys, just leave them down in the comments. And so have a good day.